welcome back to the Ink Sink. I am Annie.
I'm Kaylee.
And this is the publishing podcast for the rest of us.
Hell yes.
We're having fun. We're about to have fun. Maybe.
We have had fun. We are having fun. And we will continue to have fun at many points. Although sadly, as we are people in an imperfect world, we are not always.
Unfortunately. Fun. It's true. Yeah. It's really the world's fault, if I'm being honest. I want to have fun all the time.
Get your stuff together.
That's the real promise of like stuff like Inception or Ready Player One, is just that you can just press a button and be having fun, and it doesn't matter what bad things are happening.
Fun is had.
Yay!
We did it. We cracked the code.
Kaylee and I are doing our best to delay starting this episode because neither of us wants to talk about this.
A little more serious than we were like, oh, it'll be research methods on the internet. It'll be a nice light topic, and then we were wrong.
Yep. We were like, oh, it'll be fun. It'll be useful for people. We were like, oh, if anyone needs to research something for a paper, it's fine. We'll be able to help them. And then, things happen. So I'm going to say right up top that since the last time we recorded, there is a new crisis in the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have escalated their aggression towards each other. And one of the major ways that many people are using some of the methods that we're going to be talking about in researching things on the internet is to verify unfortunate war atrocities that are coming across our feeds. And that's not what we wanted from this topic, but it's where we're at. And as a former fact checker and as a writer, I think that we're pretty good to tell you all some really good sources. I think that you will at least walk away from this with some idea of how to verify things that you see on the internet, and also how to find things that have already been verified and how to contextualize some of that. Anyway, Kaylee, you said you had something funny to start us off, and I'm very interested to see what that is.
So I just thought it would make you laugh.
Okay, good.
Knowing generally, like, you're an editor, I'm a writer, we both dive into things like head first, and sometimes you just get stuck on the price of matchsticks in 1867, despite the fact that that genuinely means nothing to the overall plot or direction of your story. But you're like, but I want it to be authentic and accurate. And you spend 3 hours going down that rabbit hole, right? So knowing that is how we, what we actually approached this episode for, I still managed to start off with, like, if you were doing corporate research or trying to do a paper and you wanted to have a body of evidence that you could then hold up in a scientific or academic journal, how would you approach that? Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of totally useless information that I could also speak to on that topic before I was like, wait a minute. Vibe check. That's not what the topic of this is.
It's not quite our audience.
No.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. If you all are just corporate overlords wearing your suits and ties and sitting at desks.
But also are concerned about how accurate your market analysis is.
Let us know.
Also, just let us know.
inksyncpodcast@gmail.com. We maybe have grossly misunderstood our audience, and we would want to know about that.
Accurate. I told my new potential team about our podcast.
Oh yeah, what did they say?
They just thought it was cool.
That's cool. Yeah. I was at a library event last night, and I was talking to one of the librarians, and I was telling her about the podcast. She was like, "Oh my god, how are we not already best friends?" And I was like, "I love library people."
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. It was
great. Yeah, this is total non sequitur because again, I'm trying to delay us, but it was this thing that was like crafting and coffee for adults, and I was like, "Oh my god, yes!" And they're like, "Bring your own projects," and I was like, "I've been trying to carve time out of my schedule to like work on some of these projects that I've been doing." And I just went down there and I finished one project.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which was just patching a hole in a shirt. But then got to work on another project that has been just weighing on me for a long time. It was really nice, and it was like just adults. It was just like some older women chatting, and we were just drinking coffee and doing our projects, and it was really lovely. One of them was making a wreath, which was really pretty. One of them was knitting blankets for rescue dogs, and I was like, amazing, I love that. And she was showing me pictures of the dog, and I'm like, oh.
She was knitting blankets for rescue dogs?
She was.
I love that angel.
Yes. Anyway, so support your local library.
100%. Yes, as we always say. Again, you thought you were going to get away, but no. Library Army, rise up, guys.
Not today. So, when we chose this topic, we essentially thought that we were going to just be talking about like cool little rabbit holes that we've fallen down. But given current events, our research turned into fact-checking and verification methods for things that you see on the internet, which is very important. We're going to keep the tools for the more modern claims and ideas at the back end of the episode. There are going to be, we won't be able to work around it, but there will be some references to ideas that we kind of had to come up with during wartime. We said a year ago when the war in Ukraine started that, two girls sitting on a couch in Maryland aren't going to fix this problem. And that's still true in Ukraine. And it's absolutely still true in Israel and on the Gaza Strip. So if you don't have the spoons to talk about internet rabbit holes and or get super niche on your fact-checking tools, we will not take it personally if you choose to skip this one. On with the show. All right, so Kaylee, let's get into it. Researching things on the internet. Where do you want to start with this? We normally talk about this before we actually press record, but today we're winging it.
That's right. That's true.
Where do you want to start?
Let's just high level it. Why is this necessary right now? So obviously, especially in today's culture, you have so much information flying at you. It can be very, very difficult to keep up with everything, honestly. So some of the things that we're providing are not going to be foolproof, but they're really good ways to sort of vibe check whether or not what you're reading is, one, factually accurate, or two, maybe not deliberately false, but potentially inaccurate. Maybe there was good intentions, maybe the information's just out of date, but, something that doesn't necessarily pass the smell check right now. Or three, just total bullshit. Somebody was genuinely trying to scam you, or is trying to, physically, emotionally, financially, all of those things. We're not going to argue in which direction or for who, so.
Right. Absolutely. I think this is going to have a lot of dovetailing with our fact-checking episode. So we'll link to that in the show notes as well. That was a good one. Remember that the first fact-checking team, was it at Time magazine or something? Or maybe that was the source. Either way, it was all women.
They were attracted because they could yell at the men. Yeah.
When they had started fact-checking the men, and the men all decided to quit because they hadn't been fact-checked before and they didn't like being told they were wrong by women. Oh, that was great. That's a good one.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
I like that lady a lot, the first one.
Yeah.
First fact-checker, and then she quit 6 months later.
Yeah, she's like, this is bullshit.
Men are trash.
So, Kaylee, speaking of finding information about how much matchsticks cost in the 1800s, how do you verify that? Where do you start looking, and then how do you decide that what you see is correct?
So a lot of the question there is going to be what sources do you go to in general?
Yeah, exactly.
Again, your local library, your local universities will have a lot of public record information. So you could have old censuses,
I don't know.
I don't know what the plural
is it Greek?
Of that is.
I don't. Centipodes.
Perfect.
I will be taking no notes.
Absolutely no feedback at this time. So public records, where you can start diving into people that may have been doing that job, and what was their salary? Did they have any bad years, good years? Do you have any information in those records that could help you? If that isn't available for whatever reason, which, and this is a very specific niche question, so it probably wouldn't be, old advertisements or old newspapers might be kept in an archive. And then at that point, you're going to start comparing.
How are you accessing these on the internet?
So if you're if you're looking at them on the internet, again, working with your local library, is one of your best bets, and typically doesn't come with a cost.
Yeah. So in order to find these specifically at your local library, we can dive into a little bit of the specifics here, at least with our local libraries.
So sorry. That's going to tickle me for a while.
I'm going to have trouble editing now, because if we just start laughing about it randomly, it's not going to make sense.
All right, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Believe me, this is not the worst editing thing that's ever happened. One time I split up an episode where you had a Kaylee coda that referenced like every single segment that we did. And I normally like split it up into like 1 or 2 episodes. And so I had
is that why that one episode was so long? No, I'm kidding. I know.
No, thank goodness. But I had to like go in with like a scalpel to like get your like 1-word references out of there to be like, because I wasn't in this episode. And like, obviously, like you were just referencing a thing that we had talked about 5 minutes ago, but I'm just like, we didn't put it in this episode. I didn't put it in this episode.
I'm so sorry.
Yo, you should be.
I know.
I'm literally doing it to myself, so I could just let it go. We could do like Joe Rogan and just release a 3-hour podcast, 0 editing, and you all would just not listen.
I genuinely, she isn't technically wrong. Like, we have done like marathon recording sessions that were 4 hours long.
Yeah. Fun times.
Annie's got the 1,000-yard I've been in the trenches stare.
There's a reason that our episodes now are like 20 to 30 minutes and not 60 minutes as I originally thought they would be, because I value my sanity. So
in this economy?
3 leches? Oh, see, this is what I always assumed when people talked about like metaverse, like that's what they mean, because there's like 6 layers deep on that joke, and we think it's funny, but like most people wouldn't.
Like, what? Okay.
Like, I always assumed metaverse would be like a button that you click and be like, why is that? What is this? Show me the references.
I feel like that would make that would be so much better
because
than the
that's
shitty
what
world
meta means.
Correct.
But that's not how people use
Annie,
metaverse. They just mean VR, and it's like, that's just called VR though.
But we live in the worst timeline.
We do. Oh, I hate it. Anyway, so how do you specifically find old databases at your library? Good God.
We're doing great.
We've been recording for 16 minutes, and I think that this is the best 16 minutes we've ever recorded.
You know what? It's gold, Annie.
Oh,
this is prime Discord content right here.
Yeah, that's right. Join us on the Discord, yo. Both fan tiers get to the Discord, but the $5 a month fan tier gets a book fan and a special thank you note from us. Anyway, looking up databases at your library. So if you have a library card, obviously all of this is predicated on you having a library card. On our specific system, I don't know how every single system works, but there is a link on our library's homepage that says access databases here. You can click on it and you can scroll through. I believe we have access to Maryland, like every newspaper published in Maryland back to X year. I don't know the year exactly, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it's like back pretty far. We also have a national database that we get access to through our library that the library essentially, I believe, purchases access to.
Yeah, so just to keep in mind, so they are, again, subsidizing these. You should use your library, like, right. Especially if you're a student and your school might not have a journal. You should go see if your community library does.
Yeah, exactly. So you could find these resources by yourself on the internet if you wanted to, but they would charge you, whereas your local library probably wouldn't. And also, they may have databases for academic articles, which are not always going to go back that far. And they're not always going to be exactly what you're looking for, but they're going to have more analysis involved for what you're looking at. So if you do want to learn about matchsticks, but you want to learn about, the social context of matchsticks and the various labor movements around them, why
were they XYZ demographic more than any other demographic?
Right. Or like when the chemical composition of the match changed, how did that change the cultural context? So they'll have research databases like JSTOR and Gale. And that'll just be on the list of links, and you can just type your search in, pretty much using it just the way you would use Google Scholar. And you can use filters and be like, I only want to look at history, or I only want to look at, chemistry or whatever. And it'll usually come up with something, and you'll be able to scroll through them essentially just like you would on a regular Google search. So I find it really, really helpful and really easy, if I'm honest. So I use that all the time. Another one that I use is actually just Google Scholar. So just type.
It's free, guys. It's free.
Exactly.
Not everything on there is accessible, but at least you can get to the material that you're looking for. Typically, it's as in a preview or something. The synopsis will at least contain the search terms that it's responding to.
One of the tips and tricks, and we'll have a bunch of these as we go through today, but one of my best ones is when you go to Google Scholar and you're just starting your research journey on something, say, how did feminists view Julia Child? You can go into Google Scholar, type something along those lines. You want to sort by date, and then the first good scientific article you find, those references will be the most up-to-date ones because it's referenced in the most recent one. If you're searching by date and you click the first one that's genuinely what you're looking for, their references are going to be as current as possible. So that's my number one hot tip there for you, is check the references, sort by date on the original search, and those references will be even more relevant.
Absolutely. So a really good research tactic, don't tell your professors, doctors hate this, but use Wikipedia for their sources. Don't use Wikipedia directly. Start looking through their sources because that information is also very, very up to date in most cases.
Wikipedia editors don't sleep.
No, I doubt that they do. I'm pretty sure they're like Batman. They're just waiting in a bush somewhere.
What? Is that what Batman's doing?
No, he's on top of a building, Amy. He's not in a bush.
Right, I'm sorry. But the Wikipedia editors, they're in a bush.
Yeah. Obviously.
I'm so sorry. I was confused. That was a me problem.
So Batman never sleeps. He waits, Annie. That's the joke.
Oh, that's a thing that Batman says. I gotcha. Go ahead.
So anyway, I apologize. But like, where did they start? Like, what are their references? If the article seems to generally be what you need, well, how did they get there? And then what were those references? And then you'll start finding the keywords. If you don't like what you're seeing or you think you need more, you start seeing how other people are talking about your topic in such a way that you can then go to Google Scholar, or you can go to your JSTOR, or you can go to the library and pull from any of those academic sources, or just the internet in general, and you'll actually get to your primary sources if that's how you actually want to start your research, because you have information about where to go. Because sometimes when you're getting started, you don't necessarily have even the vocabulary. You don't know, especially if it's something new or current, you may not even be looking for secondary sources or academic sources. You might be looking to go straight to the source.
Right. And in the spirit of making sure that we over-explain, primary source is going to be a direct account of a person who was present at the time of said event. So you're looking at diary entries, letters, you're looking at recordings made at the time of what you're looking at. Secondary sources are going to be news articles about those things or academic articles about those things. So, like, for example, what I was just saying, like, if there's a chemical change in the, matchsticks, whatever, in the 1800s, the people who develop that new thing and like their journals and stuff would be primary sources for what we were looking at on that.
Or like somebody responding to how people have been buying more or less based on the change. Like somebody writing a letter to their friend like, man, my matchstick selling days are over. This new formula's trash.
Exactly. And then the secondary sources would be like news articles of the time being like, we're hearing reports that maybe this is a problem, that kind of thing. And then tertiary sources are like encyclopedias.
Yeah. So speaking of, the idea behind a primary source would be when people that were at the Capitol riots were recording themselves and sharing it to social media, or sharing pictures, posting things.
Those would be primary sources.
Primary sources. So your tweets, your blog posts, any of that.
And the secondary source would be the documents in the lawsuit.
Correct. Or, again, the news articles in response to, however. Yep. So, I mean, this is also, you are part of history, and it is happening all around you. So just to put that into perspective, and obviously
there are more and less reliable or more and less respected secondary sources. We could talk about that for a second. If you find these in your journey, your legal documents,
anything that you could be held accountable for lying in,
insurance documents,
probably slightly less likely to be total bullshit.
Documents like births and deaths and things like that, those are much more reliable. They're considered primary sources in some cases, but they are some of the most trusted secondary sources. News articles can get very iffy, especially before the first fact checkers were in 1923. But it wasn't like reporters before that were lying, but there was a lot of, for example, yellow journalism, where they were just kind of making up rumors and then reporting on the rumors, or they were they were aiming for more salacious stories instead of actually reporting on what happened. I don't know why we're focusing on the 1800s so much today, but in the 1800s, there was this thing called yellow journalism, where basically they were just reporting on vibes. They were just all vibes, no chaser. It was like, it was insanity. And to the point where people just stopped trusting newspapers. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the reasons that we saw this major overhaul that included adding fact checkers in the 1920s, because nobody trusted the newspaper, specifically the newspaper of record, if we're being honest. And that's why we have now such a high standard for print news, because they know what will happen if they just fall off of these standards. So,
I mean, and we've seen that already. There's just been a few high profile like incidents where journalists were less vigilant or perhaps lacked integrity in the content that they posted and got ripped apart, and then the newspaper has taken a beating. A lot of trust in national news has been damaged, and I mean that's part of the reason why local news is, you know,
dying,
prevalent. And, well, I mean,
sorry,
also dying, but
sorry, I thought you were about to make the point that like the local newspapers don't have as many resources to defend themselves from this like issue that's overall. But so you're making a different point altogether.
I am. But no, I mean, you're right. Yes, there is less. They have less resources, but they also do have more trust among the community because there are things that are happening around you. So even without necessarily going out and specifically doing this fact check, doing your initial like, did this actually happen? You know, it generally happened because you saw all of the lead up. You were there in the community. You heard the people talking. You heard your neighbors talking about it like the next day. So, I mean, it's something that is a problem, and it's becoming a problem again, which is why, of course, many newspapers have chosen to totally do away with their editorial staff. Makes perfect sense.
I would argue they're not newspapers anymore at that point, if I'm honest. They're just
papers.
Opinion pieces.
They're just
like
papers.
Yeah, I don't know what to call them.
Wrong.
They're just magazines.
Yeah.
Zines. They're zines.
They're zines.
Someone made a joke recently that we shouldn't make fun of zines because Gen X never did anything to us, and I'm like, that's fair. It's not their fault. That's zines were very of their time.
Yes.
We don't do them anymore, sadly. I wonder if there are like homemade zines anymore. Are there?
Uh-huh. It's fandom. The ones I can speak to are definitely fandom oriented.
I would assume that those had all like blogified.
Sometimes there are specific like vibes where they want to put something together in print, or they'll do I participated one when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and I've definitely seen people doing small runs of things where they're going to collect them. They'll like people will pay for them.
That's awesome. Oh, good job, all you little zine nerds out there. I didn't know you existed.
People like their retro niches, Annie.
We should do an episode on zines for sure.
That'd be fun.
We'll have to find an older person. I'm sorry, I'm making fun of Gen X again. I'm sorry.
No, although we could definitely find some fandom elders, I am sure.
We probably could.
That were, especially back in the day, like the Kirk Spock fandom was big up in the zine business. And X-Files too, I'm pretty sure.
If any of our listeners were part of the zine community, were you zine queens or kings? Email us, inksingpodcast@gmail.com. We want to talk to you.
Absolutely, 100% would love to talk to you.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
So we were talking. No, it's fair. Yeah. So just how do we like fact checking? And then why is it important? So like it is obviously understanding your sources and whether the source is valid. So if you're looking for an opinion, great, live your life. You're pretty fine with whatever you're looking at. If you're actually looking for facts, then you do need to confirm that your source is generally reputable, and then 2, that the section that your source is publishing this in is actually intended to be factual, because we do have entire separate opinion sections now.
Entire separate opinion sections, entire separate recommendations sections, which are by nature not objective because they're making money off of those recommendations. So yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what we were talking about.
Yeah. Journalistic practices. That's where I was going next. Okay. So one of the reasons that newspapers are generally considered not the best secondary sources and sometimes even tertiary sources is because the journalists aren't always properly trained. And it's not necessarily their fault. A lot of citizen journalists, they're doing their best. A lot of journalists are not going through J school anymore. They're just trying to get on the job training, which does leave some gaps. specifically with ethics and research. So you end up with things like, as we spoke about in our scholarly publishing problem episode, journalists just looking at preprints and being like,
this is true.
This must be right. So for those who don't know, a preprint is basically like a first draft of a scientific article, which is, I'm going to be clear here, not final, not reviewed,
specifically being
not
published
confirmed,
to get ripped apart. Like basically,
yes.
what are the flaws in my research? How I've presented my research? What are the issues with my arguments? Yeah.
So the preprint servers are meant to have other scientists be able to look at them, and this is like part of their review process. But journalists are stumbling on these articles and being like, "This is accurate. I'll print it now." And that was especially problematic during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when there was so much science being published so quickly.
Yeah. It was a problem. And then you'll still, that's a lot of people's argument today about like distrust in not just the news, but in the medical community.
Where there were so many different messages. And I'm not going to say that, obviously I'm not going to lay all that at the feet of journalists, but there were some where some of those messages would never have gotten to the public to begin with if a journalist hadn't misunderstood what they were looking at on a preprint server. So I will say that, like, we on this show, we're pretty pro-journalist, obviously, but there are some issues, especially in certain time periods. And so, like, we can't always necessarily trust the news media that comes out of any given era.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not just like a problem that we've solved.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it is something that we've recently encountered again, and it is just it's a battle we're going to be continuing to fight, I think, as long as we don't have one collective consciousness somehow.
That would be weird.
No, it's soup.
I don't want to be in anyone else's head.
I'm pretty sure that's how Evangelion ended. It was not good.
Is that an anime? Mm-hmm. I never watched it.
Don't worry about it. I'll cut all this out, because otherwise the anime fans might come after
for
you.
Us?
It's like
no.
Oh no, I watched it. It's not me. Come for me. Gotcha.
Yeah,
specifically for you.
Kaylee's like, I'll protect you.
Yeah, I'll be like, I'll start just spouting facts about it. Like, no, wait, guys, I swear. And I'll give you time to get out the back.
What a weird mom friend move. Just like, let me tell you about Evangelion. Go!
Save yourself! So the University of Toronto had some advice to incoming freshmen, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And there were a few different tips that they had for, like, finding sources, verifying sources, confirming that you have the right sort of information that you're coming in.
Cool.
And it had a few things that I still liked, even though I moved on from this particular trend in my research for this research topic. And so the pre-tip, the tip, and the thing that made me laugh. So the pre-tip was, just assume that everyone is lying to you. Basically. And that was very funny for me.
Oh, yeah, for
sure.
Also,
it was also just, I mean, fair. Like, you don't have to assume everyone is always out to get you or something, but assume that you do want to verify things for yourself, because you're going to then put your own name to things. So, and then the tip that made me laugh, which was keep a detailed record of sites that you have visited. And I was just like, what? But then I also thought about that, and it was like, for certain things, I do tend to actually keep, like, a record of sites that I've found, like, that generally vibed with what I was going towards.
Sure. I'm not sure how that's different from just having a website history, but...
Because, like, some things you're like, oh, no, this is wrong, or I decided this was bad, or this doesn't actually make sense, or their sources were bad, or the data has degraded, it's no longer valid.
So, like, adding notes to your browsing history? Interesting.
Yeah, or, like,
I don't hate that idea, but I feel like that's a lot to ask of a student. They're just going to be like, is this good? No, move on. But, maybe. Hey, if you want to go deep on that sounds awesome. Like, keep notes on your history. What did you think of that source? I think that'll definitely help you, at least for yourself, to figure out what vibes for you.
Yeah, and what are good sources that you can come back to.
Yeah, what you can come back to, for sure.
But also just keep everything ever.
No.
This is how it was presented.
That's and I was like, be a hard pass for
how
me.
You wrote this, no. But the vibe behind this, yes, of course. Like, the idea that you're going for makes sense.
When you're doing research, yes, you should be, like, keeping track of the sources. Yes. For the facts that you are taking.
It just cracked
for sure.
Thanks you, Toronto.
Good job, Toronto.
Also,
I knew I liked Toronto.
One of the funny things I'll do, because this article, for some reason, again, this is just like an advice blog about, like, how to research, and made me laugh several times. So they had 3 introductory paragraphs for no reason, and one of them was just
on a listicle.
Yeah, basically. I'll send it to you.
I think maybe they don't have SEO classes at the University of Toronto.
But one of the things was like how the net works, and they spelled it with an apostrophe and then a capital N-E-T. And I just laughed.
And capital N apostrophe E-T.
Apostrophe N-E-T.
They did an apostrophe and then they capitalized N-E-T.
The net, Annie.
Was this written in like 1990?
I feel like somebody time traveled. No, I'm pretty sure some older librarian or technician was probably responsible for this.
They were not up on their latest AP style guides, which you can find on the AP website.
Yeah. So we've already talked about, like, one, generally vibe checking your source. Like, do you know if this is a generally reputable source? And these are habits that you can just get in. So, like, you generally can know where to go.
Yeah.
And that way you may not need to do your full on deep dive, but like you can start somewhere and then, you know, depending on what your purpose is, okay, you're starting here, you know, it's not an opinion piece, you know, generally this group has an editing staff of some sort. And then you can review the content itself and see, one, is there a source? Like, does the content you're consuming currently provide their sources? Or does it say some mysterious oracle blew some smoke up my butt and this is what I came up with? Like, what? No. But like, do you know where they got their information, or are they giving you some general way to
some data-filled smoke?
Yeah, so like, does it make sense? Like the places that they recommend or indicated in there, can you check, does this place exist? Did this person exist at that time? Did they say these things? A lot of that is verifiable. Mm-hmm. We talked about that a little bit before, and just again segueing into fact checking, like you can generally pick a few things and you can kind of vibe check on whether the author actually did their own internal research, and you can take that as so this person was paying attention. Eye color, hair color, was this quote attributed correctly? So stuff like that will let you know if your individual author or content creators are generally of upright and non-dubious moral character.
Non-dubious moral character sounds like what a dandy describes themselves as.
Yes. I didn't say they were good, but they haven't been proven to be bad.
Right, exactly.
The importance of being earnest, Annie.
I was literally just listening to a hardcore literature episode about the importance of being earnest, and I was just giggling as I was walking my dog, being like, that was so dumb.
It's a very silly play, but
it's fantastic. For anyone who doesn't know, Oscar Wilde is my favorite author, and he's the best. So let's see. Do I have another tip? So your tip is check if there is a source.
Yeah, check.
Step 1 is check for a source. Yeah, and then step 2 is check if that source makes sense.
Yes, and if that source actually exists. Not like, did this author say that this source exists?
Exactly.
Because we've had that issue with ChatGPT and AI content.
Right. We need a link.
Mm-hmm. Not only is there a link, but does that link actually go somewhere, or does it has the data degraded, or is it recent but it's just not there? Right. Okay, well, can you just grab that quote, stick it in your Google search box, tell it to go? What does it give you? Can anything else kind of confirm any of this information
or deny?
There are several sources, which I will leave to you. I'm sure we're going to switch to yours next, that can help you confirm this.
Yeah, so I do have some tips and tricks. I found these super useful as someone who is terminally online and terminally on like Twitter /X, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, WhatsApp. I'm not on WhatsApp, but you're on WhatsApp, but you know things. Basically, if you are home at night and you're doing your doom scrolling, please know that what you're seeing on social media is probably not... what you're seeing on social media is a tertiary source. Not saying it's not true, but there have been at least 3 filters attached to what you're seeing before you see it there. And all it takes is for one of those filters to have been dishonest. And then suddenly you're looking at something that is totally untrue. So I actually compiled a list of apps that you probably already have on your phone, or capabilities that you probably already have on your phone. So I'm going to start with one that you probably already know about and probably have used before, but it's one of those things where if you see, I don't know, an image on the internet and you're like, that looks kind of funky, or if you're just like, I want to know more about this, and then you don't do this first, you will regret it. So we're going to do step by step really quickly, walk you through how to do a Google reverse image search. So you take an image and you either copy it or screenshot it, and then you go into your Google app. That is your Google app, not your Chrome app. And in the search bar, you're going to click on the camera icon and then either paste or upload your screenshot into it. And then it will show you basically everything that is either similar to that image or that is actually that image. This one came up recently because there was an image going around of some people putting on stage makeup, and there were people claiming that they were victims of some kind of violence and that they were faking it. And here's proof. Here is a picture of some people putting on makeup. And it was like, okay, but if you look at it, it was actually like an acting troupe from like 5 years ago doing a thing. So generally,
if you have actual evidence, you should have included that actual evidence. Yes.
Yes. So generally, if you find that the image with the claim is much, much older than it's supposed to be based on the claim that you're looking at, you should take the claim itself with a grain of salt. There are a lot of images that look very similar. There was I don't want to call it a scandal, a very minor issue in 2016 or 2017 when our President Donald Trump was inaugurated, and an image of the crowd at his inauguration went up on his Twitter page, except that that image wasn't a picture of the crowd at his inauguration. It was a picture of the crowd at our President Obama's inauguration. And so fact checkers were able to confirm that, and I wouldn't call that a scandal, but that was a problem. So basically, what we're looking at most of the time with an image, I don't want you, as Kaylee said, to feel like you have to assume that everyone is lying to you all the time. But remember that when you're doom scrolling and you're seeing something on whatever app you're on,
especially if it's intended to pull your heartstrings, or it is designed to evoke emotion.
Right. And it is in fact evoking that emotion. Mm-hmm. I know it's not always easy to think clearly when your emotions are being evoked, but just remember that, like I said, it's already been through several filters by the time it gets to a social media post. So it just takes one of those filters to be lying to you for it to be complete misinformation.
Yeah. Anytime you have an extra layer or an extra fail point, you have the risk of failure. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Agreed.
So an alternative, or just another way or source that could be used for reverse image search that I've used before, if you're just wanting something different, you have strong feelings about Google, Tineye, TINEYE.com is a reverse image search.
Another reverse image search. Mm-hmm. Okay. There are several other image searches out there that go even deeper than the Google reverse one. I know there are some that will try and find an origin and also take into account the metadata. Is that what Tineye does as well?
It relies on the indexing for sure. So I imagine so. Yeah. I'd have to go back in and double check. I did a lot of research in 2014 into reverse image search options, or 2015, 2016, whenever I was really interested. It's several years ago at this point. And then I dumped all of that brain information immediately once I made my choice. But it does require a lot of indexing on their part. So I would imagine there's some analysis into the metadata. Mm-hmm. So they don't store anything, and it is pretty good at finding images that have been exactly that, even if they've been edited, resized, or cropped.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah, there are truly a bunch. At the end of this, I'm going to give you all a good website that has a bunch of these on just one page, separated by category. So stay tuned for that. It's not like you're going to miss that if you keep going. So the next one that I want to talk about is something that actually does work in your Chrome app. But Kaylee mentioned this a little bit before, but I think it's one of the less understood ways to use a Google search. So Google, like many other search engines, is built on the Boolean phrase system. So if you put a phrase, no matter how long, in quotes, Google will actually search for those exact words in that exact order, spelled that exact way.
And you can use that for multiple things. So if you have, like, you know that there's a particular source and there were two different things that were said, but you can't remember something else, like you can do the quotes twice and add the plus sign in the middle, and it will pull both quotes specifically, or search for both quotes specifically.
With the quotes around them. Mm-hmm. So this happened to me recently. I was, doom scrolling on, not Twitter, because I've broken up with Twitter/X. I think it was Facebook. And someone had posted a meme like, can you believe that so-and-so, I think it was Biden, said this? And then it was like this obnoxious quote. And I was like, well, I actually can't believe that.
I don't believe you, actually. Go figure.
So I, took that quote, put it in quotes into the Google search engine. And because it was in quotes, Google searched for those exact words all together. And you know me, I'll go all the way. I will go to the 29th page of Google if I have to find something. And the only sources that I found for that quote were people just being outraged that Biden
had said that, and from that one article. At
no point did he say that. It wasn't like it wasn't even like one of his quotes out of context. It was just he never said that. It was an idea that had been implied by an opinion writer, and he's like, I think Biden thinks this, and then someone had just put that in quotes and been like, Biden said, and it's like, bro, that is not how that works. Anyway, but you can do that too. Basically, if you see on the internet that someone said something, just type that quote with the quotes around it into Google, and Google will spit back where verbatim those words come from. And if you kind of scroll back to like the first instance of those quotes or the first instance in the context that you're looking for.
Again, sorting by date is probably very helpful.
Yes, you want to sort by date, reverse date actually in this case.
But so you can't, and by the way, in case you're not sure, some people just don't know where to go to look for these tools. It's going to be directly under your search bar. There's going to usually be 3 dots, and you go to the actual tools. It'll say that.
Search tools.
Yes. To get to the filtering methods that you can use. And typically that's where you will find your add a date range. And you can even add, so you can tell it to sort by, or you can tell it to only pull things from a certain period of time or before a certain period of time.
This is kind of going back earlier in the episode, but if you're a Google Scholar, you don't have to press anything extra for that. Those filters are just right up top on the main page, so that they make it a little bit easier. I think Google wants you to trust their algorithm and not do anything else.
Trust the algorithm.
Which is fine most of the time, but in this specific case, when we're doing fact checking, you kind of have to turn some of that stuff off.
Sometimes you just have to, unfortunately, do a little bit of analysis and critical thinking to what you're seeing.
Yeah.
None of us like it.
Yeah.
But here we are.
These are all modern internet research methods. The next one that I wanted to talk about was called Ground News, which is a plugin for Chrome. I don't believe it's for any other browser, but they might have one for Firefox. I'm not totally sure. What Ground News does that I find extremely helpful is when you are on any news site, the Ground News will have a pop-up that says, the readers of this news site lean right, left, center.
I do like that, actually. It's a really good one.
And then also below that pop-up, it'll be like, here is what other newspapers with other biases are reporting about this same story. So when one of the mRNA vaccines came out, I was working at a news organization and going through looking for sentiments about one of the mRNA vaccines. I don't remember which one it was off the top of my head. So I double-checked Ground News and I was looking through their coverage on the mRNA vaccines, and I found some really wildly diverging stories and opinions, and that was super useful because obviously we're trying to talk to the widest audience possible in news, and we were able to address some of the concerns that people were having that we wouldn't have known about if we were just looking at news wires like the AP and Reuters, which dovetails perfectly into my next tool. These don't have apps, I don't believe, but you can sign up for newsletters. When we talk about journalists going into war zones, for example, we have to also talk about how some of those journalists, their mandate is not to report in an unbiased way. They're there to report to their audiences, which may not be unbiased, and they may not have the mandate to remain unbiased. There are, however, news organizations whose reporters do have a mandate to remain unbiased. They have an infrastructure behind them within their news organizations to support that lack of bias. And they also have fact checkers internationally, so available 24/7 essentially. And these aren't like sexy news organizations. This isn't Democracy Dies in Darkness, the Washington Post. Mm-hmm. This is the boring news wires like the Associated Press and Reuters. Their mandate is to present the news without editorial. Their news stories are going to be shorter. Their news stories are going to be entirely fact-based, and they're going to be presented with as little opinion or extra stuff as possible. They will add context because obviously, they realize that when something's happening, you have to add context many times, but they won't add opinions. Most of the time they don't do follow-ups separately. They'll do, a follow-up in the room, but they're not going out and trying to find what a man on a street is trying to say, unless that's a specific feature that they have been assigned to. And you can look at coverage for the AP and Reuters. They had really good newswires on Twitter back when Twitter was a thing. But you can sign up for their newsletters. They do keep a lot of journalistic integrity. And I think that that's really wonderful and helpful.
And are frequently the basis of many articles in newspapers.
They're cited. Yeah. They're cited by others as well. There are individual, I would say, exceptions to the rule stories where an AP reporter or a Reuters reporter will get the facts wrong, but their percentage loss there is going to be a lot smaller than when, I'm struggling. I'm sorry. I had like a specific example in here.
It's typically a point in time, like presentation of events as they are happening. Not always, obviously, but especially on the ground as we started this conversation, that is what they are there to do.
Yeah.
So they're going to be XYZ happened. Here is the proof that it happened or is happening. Here is my summary of events that has led up to this, and that footage is included. It's not quite as interesting, but I have that available. Maybe at most you might get, like, if it's something that's like a video or like an audio recording, you might get something around their tone where they're sad if this is tragic. And a lot of this, the things that they're experiencing are tragic. But at the end of the day, that is their mandate, which is these are the things that are happening. Blank bombed X. X then retaliated or bombed back. There have been X hostages taken.
Right.
These are the reports that we received from this police station. These people are on the ground trying to respond to it. That's what you're going to get from these sources.
Yeah.
All right. And then so other options here. So what if you don't have a huge amount of time, or you just want a quick, is this true, without having to do 29 pages of research like Annie and I might be tempted to do. So there are some actual like aggregates where they'll just summarize that research that can be done and give you a yes, no, rating on a claim or a popular rumor or report. So one of those, which is probably something that you've heard of, if not, don't worry about it, but it is one of the more popular ones, which is Snopes.com. And they're very good about, well, X is not true about this claim, but Y is kind of true because XYZ happened, so we'll give this one a partially accurate rating.
I appreciate that they go into the nuance of a claim. Agreed. Yeah.
And we have actually several sources that are specifically targeting political statements because, frankly, we've got a lot of politicians and they like to sling a lot of crap and they say a lot of stuff. So PolitiFact is a really good one. Another one that is probably considered a staple at this point that would come back to, hey, is this actually something that, this person said, or what was the context in which this was said, if it is, and that's information that they will communicate.
Yeah. Pointer is, I think, the other one that you were talking about. That's a journalistic resource so they have a lot of stuff going over basically just what journalists need to be aware of about a current situation, which a lot of times is everything.
Here are the cliff notes of everything happening in the last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Another one that I wanted to talk about. There are a lot of tools out there right now that involve AI for fact-checking. I'm on record as being a little bit skeptical about this, but a lot of the tools are simply using AI to organize already verified claims, which I think is more reasonable than some other things. But if you really like the idea of AI being used or these kind of machine learning tools in your internet search, I have a page here from the Journalist's Toolbox, which is looking at journalism's future, not its past. This is a passion project from a journalist named Mike Riley. Huge props to him. This website is absolutely fantastic. If you are ever looking for any resources or tools or tips or tricks for doing research on pretty much anything. He even has like a whole section on productivity. Like, this is a really fantastic resource. It has a Substack. And I will put a link to their AI fact-checking tools in the show notes. I will say, I think that this is one person's passion project. I think this page started as AI fact-checking tools, and then it just turned into just generic fact-checking tools. So as you scroll down, you'll find less and less AI-related stuff, but I think that that's a good thing. So you can find it. There were a couple dead links I found when I tried it and reported those. Again, passion project of one person. So if you do find any dead links, go ahead and report them to him. He has a quick little handy link there for that. Hopefully that's not dead.
Fingers crossed.
Who watches The Watchmen? Kaylee, did you have a Kaylee Coda for us?
I did. Giving back to one of the very funny sources that I found, the University of Toronto, that said essentially, people are going to lie to you all the time. No.
Okay, Dr. House.
Yeah. So no. However, you're going to encounter things where people are likelier to either lie or misrepresent the truth. Because then those are different things per se. There is something to be said for saying the sky is blue versus the sky is yellow versus, oh, the sky looked, kind of green. Do you think it's going to rain? And people can take words to mean certain things or to frame them in certain ways to elicit deep emotional responses. And it's not just words. And again, we talked about this before within this episode. Images, audio clips. Especially right now with AI technology, deep faking voices and videos and images, you have to be so careful with anything that is inciting outrage in such a way that it's going to drive you to act. I know it's hard. Maybe bake in a small window of time where you back off and you don't respond so that you regain your control of your temper or your grief or anything that is driving you to be very emotional, and actually come back and then look at this with a cooler head and search out to confirm. Because a lot of the time, especially with current events being what they are, you will see people that are using this for their own gain. And they're trying to get the revenue and outrage and grief and hysteria and fear and hatred. All of that drives their dollars. And so they're using you and they're using your emotions. They're toying with you. And all of those victims of this incredibly tragic, awful thing that is happening, all of the people that are being hurt right now are being used by some bad faith actors. So something to keep in mind is just that there are going to be people that are not acting in your interest or anyone else's interest. They're only acting for their own benefit, their own dollar benefit, their own wealth. So just take a breath, take a step. If you need to put something away for your own mental well-being, you can't even confirm, then that's totally fair. But don't let yourself fall victim to this scheme if you can avoid it. It's just something that I am concerned about, and it is always enraging to me the way that these bad faith actors take advantage of our populace and people that are just so emotional and so invested in trying to help other people.
You can find our podcast wherever you like to listen to podcasts, every podcast app, including YouTube. And if you want to support the work that we do here, you absolutely can. You can buy us a coffee on Ko-fi. You can even chat with us. All the Ko-fi tiers allow you to join our Discord, which is very fun. And the $5 tier gets you a book fan and a thank you note from us. If you want to know what a book fan is, join the $5 tier. Thanks for listening.